Starting right now. I think the show is starting right now. It's impossible to tell. It's sort of like, one of those particles that you can't really ever tell its exact position. You can just tell its probability, but you never actually know exactly when the live stream is starting. But I think it's starting. I think it's already started now. And if so, welcome everybody to the Swedenborgian Life Community Chat. It's Friday. I don't really know the date, but I'm sure it'll say it in the description there. Thanks for coming, everybody. I see Keith, Robert, Preliminal, Maggie, Matthew are all in the chat already. So great to see all of you here. Everybody, how's your week going? Hey, Cynthia, welcome. Nice to see you. And I feel like the Swedenborgian community is growing. I mean, today I just felt like I'm talking to so many people, and I'm just doing a little portion of the talking that the whole Swedenborg Foundation is doing, and that's just one little corner of the whole thing. But that also makes me wonder, like, what do you call this? Is it the Swedenborgian community, or is it what do you guys call it? Or are we a thing? Do we call ourselves something? Because people call it all kinds of different things. Some people do call it Swedenborgian, which I think there's pros and cons to. Yeah, it's sort of centered around Swedenborg stuff, so it makes sense as a tagline. But then also Swedenborgian is a mouthful. It's not that easy to say. It sounds a little funny. But also, I know that, hey Kirsten, hey Robert, hey Sharon, nice to see you all. And I also wonder, because one time somebody said to Swedenborg, this is Swedenborgianism. And he's like, it's not Swedenborgianism. It's true Christianity. But then again, there's a problem with that, because you can't just go around saying, hey, Christianity, we're true Christianity. I mean, there's an issue there. But also, some people feel very Christian about Swedenborg. Other people say this is something distinct from that. I see Sharon Spruill said new church community. Yeah, what do you guys call it? I know Cortland Bell, who we had on the show before, calls individual people a new church. What is it? What are we? Are we a thing? So Sharon's saying, yeah, true Christianity. Swedenborg didn't want to. The Left Eye League, says Will Linden. Yeah, let's do that. then people will really think that we're Illuminati. Do you guys ever get that? I get that on YouTube. I learned about this thing called Illuminati, which is like the secret force that runs the world. And supposedly, because we had a single eye as our logo, they thought we were that. But I don't think I am, because I don't feel like I run the world. Hey, Marlon, Mina, everybody who's just signing in, welcome. Hey, how's Swedenborg doing for you guys this week? Have you found anything that's useful or that's helpful? Hey, Catherine, nice to see you. Is it working? That's always what I want to know. And yeah, if anybody has any other ideas for names, but I think Left Eye League is the winner at this point. No, they're all good in all kinds of different ways. We have a good show for you today. I feel like who is that? Does Conan say that, or is that Jimmy Fallon? Welcome. Hey, welcome to you. I actually don't know how to pronounce that. If you could write it out. Anyway, we're going to have a great show for you tonight. We've got some amazing guests from our staff that are going to chat for a little while, as well as a couple more audience members who are going to come and tell their story, which is really awesome. Jade says maybe correspondence Christianity. That's interesting. Correspondence Christianity. I like the sound of that. Scott Green, YouTube is a fountain of stupendous knowledge. And I agree, because before I started doing stuff like this on YouTube, I really didn't know anything about YouTube, and I thought there's nothing of substance on YouTube. I thought it's all cat videos and that kind of stuff. But actually, there's some really amazing, deep content on there, and we're trying to be some of that ourselves. But there's a lot of serious discussion around spirituality on YouTube. Scott Green, wait, there was one right above Scott Green. I just said Scott Green. Oh, Londi said it's really understanding the Holy Spirit and everything else. Okay, so that's the core of it. Is just an accurate understanding of things. Rain Lion says, I think Swedenborg's work really helped me to better understand the symbolism in the Bible, and better understand the nature of connection with the spiritual world and God. Well, that's a pretty good spread there, right? And that's what we're trying to do: give you tools that lead to like a better feeling worldview. Like, oh, now this makes sense. These things that were before a little difficult, now they're easy and they're cool. Sharon, it's all right if you can't spell Christianity. Spelling is a lost art. I'm not saying that because she had a typo, but she said there, I can't spell it today. It's a lost art because the computer always corrects you. So what does it even matter anymore? Oh, Scott Green says cat videos are the best. I'm like a sucker for things that are that are like sort of cliche on the internet. I remember when planking came out and I found out about it. Do you guys know planking? It came out like, and like 4 years later, I was like, that's so funny. People do this thing where they lie down on things. My brother Matt was not amused. Hey, Suzanne says, my first time live. I love your site. Thank you, Suzanne, for making it possible. I'm so glad. It's so cool to me when people who want to join live get to join live. So everybody, if we can give Suzanne a warm welcome. Oh, and speaking of welcomes, we have our technical director, Stuart Farmer, over here. Hey. So, and if you guys want to ask any questions, I mean, now's the time. This is sort of part of the content here. Will, I agree, Will. Hey, Matthew Bush. Matt Bush says, hey, Curtis, nice to see you. And your dad is in here, too, isn't he? Robert's around here somewhere. I think he was one of the first people in the chat. And I've been doing some interesting research and preparation for a presentation I'm going to give. It has really led me into what Swedenborg says about the way the spiritual world affects our thoughts and feelings. And it's just good refresher all the time to go in there, read some Swedenborg. And I was reading especially about how desiring credit for things kind of locks off the inflow. So I'm trying to just be like, all right. This is just, it's all about helping everybody out. So anyway, these little reminders really, I feel like, make a difference in how I feel day to day. That's why we're trying to spread it. Teresina says, how does the heaven have room for so many people that came to live there since the beginning of humanity? Aren't we running out of space? Wouldn't we rather, I want some people to be in heaven, but I don't want everyone to be in heaven, because then if you don't have good public transportation, you're going to have a lot of congestion. How does it work? And Swedenborg actually does address that very thing, because he says that he was shown, because there had been people in his day there was actually religious dogma in certain branches of Christianity that said heaven is only open to 144,000, or there were other beliefs as well, that's it and then it's closed. But he says he was actually shown the uninhabited parts of heaven. And he said that there was so much of it that everybody who's ever come into heaven, he says not just from this earth, but from a lot of earths in the universe, it doesn't even make a dent. That you're not even close to, the human experiment has not even really started. That what we think of as vast numbers are nothing compared to God, because God actually is infinite. Terrence Sticker says, eclipse, what does it mean? It's funny because you know how I said the Swedenborgian community is growing? One of the people I was talking to today was talking to me about the eclipse and saying, what's the correspondential meaning of that? So I've actually looked up what Swedenborg says about, or 2 out of the 9 passages where he mentions eclipse. And in both of those, he's talking about eclipses represented in the spiritual world. And once he's in his book, Last Judgment, the continuation of Last Judgment, number 11, he talks about groups of people in the spiritual world that were in religious knowledge but were not living loving lives. And because of that, they were blocking the inflow of the divine. And he says it appears in the spiritual world like an eclipse, because the moon is faith. Have you ever heard that as a basic correspondence? The moon is faith. So when the moon gets in the way of the sun, you lose all your light. That's what an eclipse is. And I would think it has many other similar sort of sister correspondences along with it. Daryl Sanders says, hello, Curtis and all. This is my first time here, but watch the Monday show every week. Hey, Daryl. Love having you here. So glad you could make it today. You make the show better by being here, and I'm glad Sharon said hi to you as well. Keith says, I like coming here and getting my daily doses of Swedenborg. It really helps. Well, it really helps. Then I'm happy, because that means we ain't wasting our time doing shows about Swedenborg, talking about him for an hour. Jade says, eclipse maybe wisdom is moon and no love sun equals darkness. That's succinctly well said. Brent says, hello from Norway. Great to finally watch Swedenborgian Life live. Yay to all. So Brent, welcome. So great to have you. And I think part of what we're doing in this 3 o'clock time slot is allowing some people who are in the next couple time zones over to be able to watch it before the middle of the night. So thanks. Great to have you. Christina says, this has been the first time in over a year since I moved to Taiwan that I've got this community live. But I haven't stopped watching and read everything the Swedenborg Foundation does. We don't want to lose you just because you moved to Taiwan, or if you moved to Taiwan from Taiwan to somewhere else. So that's what we're trying to do, provide a variety of programming at a variety of different times. Robert says, I found out about Swedenborg in your channel only a few days ago, but I'm familiar with these kind of teachings for a while now. I was wondering where Off the Left Eye got its name from. Yes, we do have a short clip that's called where what's it called? How this channel got its name, or it's like one of the featured on the channel. But I'm going to give you what it is. Swedenborg, and this is going to be really brief, but Swedenborg says that he was being shown what it's like to transition from the physical world into the spiritual world, and he said that as he did it, there was this sort of after his spirit had been pulled out of his body, there was this reawakening period in which angels were present with him, working on his emotions, just keeping them in a safe space. And then as he began to stir, it seemed as though angels from the spiritual heaven, the second heaven, peeled a covering off of his left eye, which gave him the use of spiritual sight. So what we're doing here is trying to help us all, awake to the idea side of this faith or spirituality stuff, and through that we can all get to the right side, or the loving together. Does that sound about right? I don't know if that's accurate or not. I'm going to get some experts in here to help me out. I have a couple of excellent people on the Swedenborg Foundation team. Chris Dunn, Chelsea Odner are here to talk. Hey, Chris, I see you first. How's it going? Hey, there's Chelsea. All right, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, Chelsea, how are you?
Good. Glad to be here. And I think your description of what the left eye corresponds to is good. So.
All right, Chris, welcome. Great to have you on this live chat show thing for your first time, I believe.
I am so excited.
Good. Okay, so there was a question right above that one about the left eye, Stuart. Wasn't there? Go down like 2 notes. What does the Book of Acts call the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost? Does Swedenborg ever talk about the difference in terminology? Wow, I'm glad I have you guys here because I don't know. Have you guys ever heard about, is there a difference between, is that just different translations, or do they really mean something different? I know that Swedenborg says if there's a different underlying word, it really does matter. It could be that one is love and one is wisdom. But before I just make stuff up, have either of you come across that?
Yeah, in one of our, I think it might have been our show on the Trinity. What does the Trinity mean? How to understand the Trinity, maybe, is what the show is called. We did a part on the Holy Spirit, and it was really interesting to dig into. It was sort of too much for the show, I think.
As always.
We dug into what Swedenborg says, where he draws a difference between how the Old Testament uses the concept of the Holy Spirit and then how it's used during Jesus's lifetime in the world and then afterwards, and that the sort of shifting that's happening there is because we have a different connection with the Spirit now that Jesus has assumed a human form on the earth, and then that human form was glorified. So we have a new connection to the Holy Spirit. And that's like my general memory of what that was.
Yes. Excellent. Chris, anything?
No, Chelsea was perfect.
Okay, good. Well, because as Will makes a good point, Will Linden in the chat says he wouldn't have, because that's an archaic English translation. Newer translations say Holy Spirit. So if it's just like 2 different ways of doing the underlying word, it would all be the same thing. Teresina says, can we find our very old ancestors when we come to heaven? So does Swedenborg say anything about, is it like you only can interact with people who recently have passed, or do we get to connect all the way back into history?
Go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just thinking, kind of the thing that I always go to when thinking about the idea of connecting with people in the spiritual world is that thought brings presence, and kind of having an affection for someone in a relationship in the natural world oftentimes can unite people in spirit. So I'm not sure about ancestors that you hadn't ever known before, but perhaps if you read them, you developed an affection for them via diaries or things you've discovered. I could imagine that there'd be a way to connect to some degree.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, the thought brings presence. That it's not like, oh, I wish I could meet this person, but I can't afford a plane ticket. It's not like that. Chelsea, did you have thoughts?
And this isn't. It's sort of based on Swedenborg, but it was an insight I had a few years ago when I just, for some reason, I hadn't ever put it together in my mind. So it might sound sort of like elementary or something to people, but that just recognizing that our spiritual community is real, and that Swedenborg writes about our associate spirits, like angels that are present with us, and we have angels through all the levels of heaven are connected to us, in our spirits. And I just was like, well, of course, why wouldn't that be just my family? You know, like, I mean, our family trees branch out so much
Yes.
as you go back, but like, if there's a spiritual affinity there that I might not know because I don't know my, nth generation ancestors, but it would just sort of make sense that that might be spiritually the community that I'm connected to, even though I didn't physically know them or study their lives in this world or whatever. So
yeah, and I was just looking at a picture of family trees because I was trying to put together a slideshow, and it should be like family web, because we think of it as like a tree is us, but it's really like, here's us, here's our next of kin coming down from it's not really a tree, it's like this forest family, and all the human race is kind of intertwined in there. And I do think about Swedenborg he said he talked to Abraham, that he was able to talk to people from long, long ago because he had an interest. It seems like if you have an interest, you're generally allowed to make contact. So it's got to be if you wanted to go see the fam, that it could happen. Oh, and I just want to, Chris, I'll let you in, but Joan Curry said, "Hey Curtis, love the show. Trying to find a Swedenborgian meetup group in Las Vegas. Again, love the show and staff. I just want to say that we love you, and we're trying to get this meetup thing to work. Give us a moment, but we're going to try to get it so that we help facilitate people meeting up, because that's the next phase of the whole community thing." So yeah, Chris, what were you going to say?
Oh no, I just wanted to add one thing that really kind of shook me to the core when I first discovered Swedenborg was this reframing of fellowship in the spiritual world.
Yeah.
I thought I had these ideas that, like, of course, in the natural world, family and our loved ones are so critically important, and that affection is, I think, an eternal thing. But at the same time, the community that we're with in the spiritual world becomes so beloved to us because we're in harmony with them. We're growing together, yet as individuals, in guidance from the Lord. It reframes family in a deeper, more beautiful sense than you could even fathom in the natural world. So it's just so cool to think about that.
Yep.
That's a good point. You sort of have two family trees. You have like your genetic family line, but then you're right. Swedenborg does say you come into community with people based on the different ways rather than like, oh, this person is my grandfather because he shares this genetic line. It's like this person is like a grandfather because the way that he loves and thinks about things relates to the way I do in that sort of same role.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so we have another question. This is from Banjo234. If heaven and hell need the human race to exist meaningfully, and because the universe has a beginning, does this mean that eternal isn't really eternal? There appears to be a contradiction here. Can we keep this thing going? I know that to open that, I want to say that Swedenborg says, if we try to think about the universe, eternity in terms of time, it's not going to make sense. But you have to think about it in terms of state. So the universe had a beginning. He says even thinking of it like that is a tough way to think about it. That really you think about a state of eternity, and that somehow what we're experiencing here with time and space and we can measure back a certain number of years is just like an approximation of the reality. But I'm just saying nothing. So do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just think that like you said, it's useful not to think about it in terms of time. And our whole concept of time is really something that we've created to make sense of our reality. But we can think about, the Big Bang happened and this much happened in this like split second. And then all of a sudden you have this physical universe. But for all we know, I mean, I just think physical reality, like matter, has existed. And that plane of existence, that outermost level that Swedenborg says is so essential and is this foundation for heaven, I can only assume that has always existed, even if our physical universe as we know it had a beginning. Who's to say there weren't other physical universes? I mean, like it gets to the point where it's sort of, what's the point of thinking about it? You know, who's the next person they're going to run into? Treat them nicely.
Right. And Curtis J. Adams, hello Curtis, I'm Curtis, also we can't understand eternity because we're not eternal. In the sense that and I think of that in the sense of like we're finite versus infinite, you know. Anyway, Chris, did you have any thoughts on that?
No, no.
Good. I will get to you last so that you can just pass it on.
Pass it on.
So Maggie's asking if there's a Swedenborg group in Seattle. So if anybody is in Seattle, let her know. I know that there's one of the Swedenborgian churches, I think, has a church out there. I think it's the General Church. If you go to newchurch.org, they have one out there. I thought I might know who's the pastor there, but I don't think I do anymore.
If Maggie wants to go into the comments section and make an inquiry, I can help her navigate that.
Yes. So the thing is, this live discussion we're all doing here is going to disappear when this is over. But if anyone wants to leave a comment after the stream is over, we'll be able to get back to you and answer. Okay, cool. So does a person, preliminal says, does a person need to learn and practice a basic level of truth before they see the symbolic, deeper spiritual meanings? So do we have to sort of get our foot in the door before we even are picking up the deeper things? You guys have any thoughts on that?
I do. I don't have to go first, but I could.
No, this is the way we do it. Okay.
It just makes me think of what Swedenborg says about the 7 days of creation, and that the earth is without form and void, and then there's this spirit brooding over the waters, and then this light, and that is this first awakening that we have. And Swedenborg writes about how that we need truth and goodness to be in us, in our memory somewhere, for that to kick in at some point. But that's something that we all have. The Lord provides that we all have some access to truth and especially to love, to the experience of love, and that kind of gets catalyzed at a certain point. He describes it being like when you reach rational age, like when you've reached adulthood. And so I guess in terms of her question, I feel like that truth is already there, but then we start thinking about it differently. And then I guess it goes from there in terms of being able to see things symbolically. What do you guys think?
I think that, just coming from my own understanding of Swedenborg at this point, I can see that there would be kind of a practical nature to learning the kind of the literal sense, so like what the Bible is saying, and then from there understanding the spiritual, deeper truths within that. I think there's just a natural progression as you grow spiritually. I think of just simply the times in which I started reading the internal sense of the Bible, or the things that are deeper within those natural truths, before really paying much attention to the natural truths to begin with, and it kind of jumbled my mind a little bit. So almost having a foundation of kind of more simple, basic spiritual principles that you can then successively build your faith off of upwards. I think that's always worked for me. I'm not sure what you guys think.
No, I think that it's always seems like there has to be a foundation laid for the next level of understanding to happen. Swedenborg talks about the angels from whom all spiritual insight comes, God through angels to us. You do have to have, we even talked about it in one of our shows, concepts into which they have a plane that they can operate in. So you have to have certain things in your mind in order for that to work. And also that Swedenborg's whole journey was sort of laying down these first levels that I believe he was articulating that he couldn't have done what he did, downloading that much spiritual information and explaining it, unless he already had all of this natural background in anatomy and in Christian theology, and when he started to get all this meaning about the Bible, he went and learned Hebrew to make sure so there was this sort of this initial level you've got to have, because that's the way that the order seems to be set up all around us, right? I mean, you have to, in order for me to be able to do anything, I got to kind of learn the basics first, even painting or basketball, or I think that's everything that people do. So yeah, I totally think that there's something to that. We have Malik says hi from Vienna, Austria. Raven said hi from the UK. Janny German said, love the movie The Shack. It gives another perspective of God, and you see and understand things differently, just like Swedenborg. Did you, Chris or Chelsea, did either of you see The Shack? I've been hearing a lot about it.
Nah,
I watched
I'm going to see it now.
Okay, yeah, I watched a preview of it. Well, because somebody said, could you do like a Swedenborgian media review of The Shack? And I thought that would be a fun game for us to get into, like the movie reviews.
Oh, yeah.
We'd have to like make it so that what would be the angle? Would you? Because you wouldn't just want to be saying, well, in this scene they are not obeying the Ten Commandments. In this scene they are. You'd have to like find some like value added, but maybe you like expound on the symbolism or something like that.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Do we have some questions here? Why did God call our dear loved ones to live in heaven and left us here so lonely? That's a good one, right? So why is there this terrible loss that people have to go through? And I think the implicit question is, why isn't there more communication, right? Why, even if they're going somewhere else, why don't they stop in once a week and talk to us? You know? So have you guys? I'm sure we've all been pondering this, but I'd love to sort of get your take on both. Why is it like that, and then are there any ways we can sort of deal with it?
Well, I think that, like, for me, I'm instantly reminded of why we're even in the natural world to begin with. Why not just kind of ultimately just be in heaven from the onset?
Right.
And one of the things that shook me that I read about Swedenborg had more to do with the opportunity that he gives us in complete freedom to choose loves that align with heaven, spiritual loves that are, driven by kind of like a want to serve others, a want to honor the nature of love and its and all of its beauty. And that's a personal journey that we're all on. So the natural world becomes just the arena whereby we kind of develop and come into who we really are and who we want to be. And then we get to live that true self into eternity. And it's a gift into eternity to us if we, if we choose that heavenly joy and lifestyle. And I think it really does stink when we lose people. I mean, I think we all can relate to how painful that is.
Yeah.
But I'm also reminded of how intimate the journey is for each of us, that because we're all journeying towards eternity, that we're in eternity journeying constantly towards it, that we're on such a individual journey, and then we end up where we're meant to be. So I don't know, it's tough like to see relationships and losses, but at the same time, we're all kind of doing our thing, moving towards meaning and purpose in our own lives individually.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to say that Alma Clark just wrote, I never appreciated my body until I had knee surgery. Then I absolutely love the creation of my body and its functions. Loss sometimes is the best source of gratitude. And not that we would want to lose, but that is this providence. One of the good things providence can bring out is that grief is actually, for a second, feeling the depth of the love we have for each other. Because there can be somebody that we know them all the time, they're around us, but if they're gone, suddenly it's like, wow, we feel it. But Chelsea, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, that was pretty much what I was thinking, was just that there is providence in it, that we think we're alone here, but we're really not alone, and we're never apart from providence every day and in how every day is going. And that's something that we can rest into even when things feel, really horrendous on the earthly level. But that if you can take a sec to then soften to what that really feels like, that the sadness, the grief that you have at losing people or whatever it is, like to get into that feeling level, then I think it is what that woman was saying in the chat, that it's connecting you into eternal love. Like it just leads you into this confidence of like, oh, there's something really deep and powerful here. And the Lord is always wanting to make use of that and lead us into use even our suffering to lead us towards happiness.
Yeah. Well, and that is there. I feel like that's the most comforting teaching that Swedenborg has, is that everything can lead towards happiness. Everything he can lead toward a good end, as he puts it, even if it doesn't seem like it at all. So, you guys, with that, we've reached the half-hour mark. So I want to thank you both so much for coming, and hope to have you again on the show soon. As always, love just getting to hear your wisdom and your heart around all this stuff.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. Thanks so much. Great to hang out.
Totally. So and I had a final thought on that, which is, I feel like it's important to add to the discussion that Swedenborg says this is not how it's supposed to be, where somebody dies and you don't see them at all and you don't even know if they are still alive or if there is a life after death. That's not the way the human condition is meant to be. That there is supposed to be much more open communication that there was in the early phases of humanity. We've lost that for a lot of complex reasons, mostly having to do with the general shift towards selfishness and materialism in the human race. Not that each of us individually are, but there's been this huge disruption of the way things are supposed to be. So we feel this disrupted by people dying because it's messed up. It's not how it's supposed to be. Swedenborg says ideally everyone would only die in old age and in the easy, smooth transition, and we would have a lot of communication with them on the other side. It almost would feel a lot less like they were gone. So it's going to hurt because things aren't as they should be. So we got a couple people thanking Chris and Chelsea, and I wholeheartedly agree. And then Preliminal says our losses and suffering somehow correct us. And then Raven says, I believe we are here to learn unconditional love the spiritual beings that we are, grow from each experience, take positive in all that life throws at us. There becomes a reason for each one. Yeah, I agree. Hey, Chris Dunn, thanks, appreciate it. So Chris Dunn rolled right into the chat there. Sonny Sim says it's a gradual, continuous thing. It takes prayers, faith, etc., but you know when your spirituality grows. Absolutely. And what I've found with grief in general is you got to grieve how you've got to grieve. That it's all right. Everybody's going to do it differently. Some people will say, "Oh, you've got to take this long to get over it." Other people say, "No, I got over it quickly." But what is even getting over it? And it's okay to feel fine sometimes when you think you shouldn't feel fine. It's okay to feel miserable sometimes when you think you should by now feel fine. Everybody grieves in their own way, and that's the most important thing I feel like I've learned about the whole thing. Preliminal. So glad this community is helping. That's our greatest hope here. Sheila asks an easy question: why did Jesus have to be crucified? Just kidding. We did a whole show about it was called this. Why did Jesus suffer and die? So I think that's a good spot to start. I'll give you the short answer: is that Jesus. We talk about these spiritual struggles that we go through. There's heaven and hell, and both are trying to take over us. And you could say the same thing. It's the battle between ego and selfishness and love and altruism. And we have to, through fighting against the harmful tendencies in us, push that away and accept in freedom what's good. Jesus was God doing this on the grandest scale. That this was, the whole human race was out of balance to the point where consciousness would not have been possible anymore if there hadn't been an intervention. Jesus' crucifixion was one part in that. Specifically, it was this allowing of evil to reach its peak so that good could overcome it, so that there could be love practiced throughout it. And it's even the specific things that Jesus went through all had symbolic meaning. And actually, see that show, Why Did Jesus Suffer and Die? Because you'll see that Jesus was actually one of a long line of prophets. All these prophets had weird things happen to them. It has to do with this correspondential representation of what people were doing to the truth. That this is the way people had destroyed the blueprint that was sent down for us, which was to love and care for others. That was the same. They did all that symbolically to Jesus. So he was kind of taking a lot for the team. Or that's how Swedenborg defines it. Cynthia says, thanks, Chris. I feel better each time I watch. We all grieve differently. So true. Harlan says, which is a great point, we love the spiritual qualities of people. These don't disappear when the body dies. And Soul Purpose Artist says, this channel is a lifesaver for me. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you. Curtis says, you guys don't realize how much you mean to so many people. And I'm appreciating it. And I'm just like, let us know what we can do, how we can do it, like to be of service to whoever we can. That's the game. That's the whole goal. So is it true the more materialistic we are, the less spiritual we become or are? That's Linda. It depends on what's the driving force behind materialism. Swedenborg says it's all about the prioritization of love. So you can like things that are nice, but as long as they're not the end goal and that you wouldn't trample over people to get them, if you see them as any kind of wealth as a means to, in the end, serving the greater good, it can actually be just fine. So anyway, with that, that's enough of me talking about things. I said I want to meet people. So we're going to bring in, like we did last time, we actually have audience members who have called in to and they're willing to share their story here, because I want to meet all of you and I want to learn what about Swedenborg means something to you. So with that said, Jennifer, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I hear you too.
Hey.
So nice to
Yes.
see you, Jennifer. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and so I was just thinking, could I just hear a little bit about, how did you find us? What's your story? Because I'm just always fascinated to how do people connect up with what we're doing here?
Dying to tell you, I guess. Just before we start, though, I find it amusing that the things that you were speaking of and the questions that were coming in.
Yeah.
I made these little notes about ancestors, and actually right behind me here is my great grandfather that was like taken in the 1800s. So I just thought that was interesting, and some of the things that Maggie from Seattle, I want to let her know that there is a church in Wenatchee that meets twice a month.
Okay.
In Wenatchee, Washington. So she's listening.
Yeah.
Just let her know. But and then the question off the left eye, that's how I came upon you. I just saw off the left eye, and it just reminded me. It caught my interest because it just reminded me that it seemed like if anybody's ever like saw somebody like off the side, it's always off the left eye. I don't know if anybody has had that experience, but I have a couple of times.
Yeah.
Where I'm like doing dishes or something, and I think I see somebody, and I turn, and there's nobody there, and it just seems to be off the. So that's what I thought it was about. I thought it was like a ghost thing.
Yeah. Well, it is about that.
Yeah. I guess
we'll
I guess
it's about
it is
that. Yeah.
a spiritual thing. So
Daryl, Maggie, and Linda all say hi to you, just so you know.
Oh, hello, Daryl, Maggie, and Linda. And so anyway, that I just started with that. I think it was How to Free Your Mind from Hell, and I was actually surfing I broke my heel, and I was trying to meditate on how I didn't want to take pain pills, so I was trying to how to free your body from pain. But anyway,
yeah,
and off the left eye, and so on and so forth. The rest is history, and it just absolutely just blew my mind. When I started reading about, when you started talking about the head bullies and where thoughts come from, and it's just changed my life. Actually, it's only been less than a year, maybe, and it really has changed my life. I always thought I was a nice kind of a peach of a gal, and really in Swedenborg, if you read Swedenborg and what love, divine love, and wisdom, and taking your heart from stone and turning it to flesh, what that really entails, and making sure that the love that you give out, it's coming from the Lord. It's not coming from you. Right. It's not coming from angels. It's coming straight from the Lord, and that's just an awesome light to feel inside you. So that's how it's changed my life, and I'm just so glad I came across you guys. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, and that's like really taking it to heart, and so it's brought some. Oh, this is like a new way to look at life, in a way that even offers something you didn't have before.
Right. Like you talk to people all day, you see people all day, you see them in their cars, and you think of them as one dimensional. Yeah. And now I know that they're three dimensional. They're real people, flesh and blood. They have lives, and I'm much more tolerant and. Yeah. And when you start thinking that way, and you keep thinking that way, it just becomes habit, and your life changes. Maybe your situation around you doesn't really change, but the way you look at things change. And so it's just a really great state of mind to be in.
Yeah. And so Sharon gave you an amen on that. She liked what you said there. And also I find that, because the concept you're talking about, that now I see people instead of one-dimensional as three-dimensional, like instead of just, there's some cartoon that's just an artifact on my life. No, they're actually really people like I am. It seems like a simple thing, but I find that all the complex stuff in Swedenborg helps me to really get there in a way that if you just told me that all the other people are real, it would, like, I would go for a little while, but it wouldn't stick like it. Like you mentioned the concept of God's love coming through. I do find sometimes it's the very specific things that you find in Swedenborg that help get me there and keep me there. You know what I mean?
Right, right. And that I just came across, and I think you were saying at the beginning of the show, I finally bought Heaven and Hell because I just like to hold a book.
Yep.
It's just a thing. But I read something about the educated that would get, that would die, go to heaven, and they think that they got a easy way in. They're in because they've got all this knowledge. They know the Bible in and out, backwards and forwards. And he says, well, do you have it lodged in your memory or is it lodged in your life? And that was a huge, that was like a, wow, that was a pow.
Yeah.
That really got me to just kind of remind myself, because I'm not perfect. I have, moments all day long where I'm like,
yeah.
And I have to remind myself that I have to be in a different state of mind if I want to be happy. So, people, it seems like everybody's in such a state these days, like what's happening with the world? Why is there so much suffering?
Yeah.
And why are you so happy all the time? And
What's wrong with you?
I can say, yeah, exactly. Are you retarded or something? And I'm sorry, didn't mean to.
Oh, that's all right. It's meant in good faith.
Skip right over that.
Yeah.
Mute me. But it really is. It does become a way of life. But I kind of have a question. I don't know what everybody else would call themselves out there.
Okay.
Like a Swedenborgian. It's not that I worship Swedenborg.
Yeah. Did you know that I started this very show by asking that question?
Are you serious?
It was before you had signed on. That's how I started this show. And so what I said, and this will be repeating for the people there, is Swedenborgian, exactly. There's good things about it because it categorizes it neatly. The downside is that Swedenborg himself, there was a letter in which someone was saying to him, this is Swedenborgianism. And he's like, it's not Swedenborgianism, it's true Christianity. But that there's issues with it. So people had different ideas. One person said correspondential Christianity. One person said a new church. There's been Swedenborgians have called themselves all kinds of things, but I still call them Swedenborgians in my head. I think that's been one of the great limiting factors on the spread of Swedenborg is, hey, Swedenborg is a weird word, and there's not like even like Mormon is like that's a simple little short word. It's not like Joseph Smithianology or something like that. So I don't know. Some people like Swedenborgian for good reasons. Some people like the new church. The answer is it's a work in progress, and I think someone's got to come up with something great and tell the rest of us how we do it. So
have a contest or something. Yeah.
Yeah, you can win $14 if you come up with the name of this. Don't cash that till Friday. Yeah. So hey, Christine in the chat says, "Wow, I completely relate to everything she is saying and how Swedenborg came into your life when it did, and how much it's changed how you think and view life." Thank you. So you're touching people there, and I want to close out one more question for you, because you a couple times there described ways that Swedenborg made you look at yourself, like, oh, I thought I was pretty nice on my own before, or realized, do I have this written on my heart? Which some people would say, oh, like is that sort of, there's some guilt or accusing there, but you said it like it made you feel good, or that it was something positive in your life. Would you just describe that a little bit?
Well, I guess it's just the state of mind that you're in. You start drowning out those voices that, just thoughts that aren't loving, aren't aligned with God's divine love and wisdom. You start trying to think like an angel, I guess.
Yeah.
How would an angel think about this? And so in being that way, my life is much better. Like I said, I haven't won the lottery or anything like that, but it's just much happier.
Awesome. Well, and if you're much happier, then I'm happy that we're doing what we're doing, because we're getting something out there that can improve lives. And thank you so much for sharing a little bit of how your life has been touched. And it was great to meet you.
Thank you so much, Curtis. Bye, everybody. And we'll see you soon. Bye.
All right. Talk to you, Jennifer. All right. Yeah, so that's awesome. Okay, so it works. Swedenborgianism or whatever it's called works, and it's just cool to hear people and to hear her hear her say that okay, even the stuff that has you look at yourself is a net positive. It's not just like getting you down on yourself. It's like, no, this is a tool to give me the this is how I can think like an angel. So I think that's awesome. Minimal says new church is a good title yet too simple. Yeah, because it's true that but we're back to the naming game. When you search for new church, you'd be like, oh, a new church was just built in Downingtown something. So how are you going to differentiate your brand? Robert says it is correct to call things with its true name. The true church has only one name, and it is not named after a man. So maybe just church. And then Sharon says, thanks, Jennifer. Bye. So yeah, I love getting to meet a bit of the community. Oh, and Daryl says bye. And I know, Daryl, earlier you were asking if there's like a Swedenborgian or whatever church in the Washington, D.C. area, which I know there is. I know that there's two of them. There's one in D.C. and then there's one in Mitchellville, Maryland, which is just like a suburb of D.C. So what you would need to do is go to Swedenborg.org, is the Swedenborgian Church of North America, and I think they have a church in D.C., and then newchurch.org is the general church of the New Jerusalem, and I think they have the church in Mitchellville. So there's a couple of communities there for you to check out. A little bit interesting trivia that I heard about, because I see some discussion here about Christianity, is that I was told that Christianity was originally an insult that the Romans made up for people who were following Jesus. That it meant little Christs, and that was actually a term coined from the outside. Somebody do some Googling on that and see it, but I think that's what's up. Justine says, I wish there was one near me in Ontario. I know that there's one in Kitchener, Ontario. I don't know where in Ontario you are, but there's at least a small group in Kitchener. Alma Clark says, the concept of state of being is liberating. Instead of being stuck or damned to a certain state, we can be progressing or in a state of becoming. Hey, Daryl says he lives in Mitchellville. You better check that out right now. Alma, that's totally right. And also this whole idea of the states are coming in from the spiritual world, and instead of identifying and saying this is permanently who I am, I'm in this state, can I move out of it? And even that Swedenborg would describe these as sort of auras or spheres in the spiritual world, that if you just can get out of them by changing the way you think and feel a little bit, then you're not in them anymore. It's not that it's a part of you and that it'll always be a part of you. So Mary Richards says, I like New Church, and it could be that one wins out. Who knows when we hold our contest. Linda says, names shouldn't matter, but they do. I've been a Christian all my life, but I'm not happy with how many have hijacked the name and filled it with hate and discrimination. And that's a good point. That Christianity itself, like if you were going to name Swedenborg correspondential Christianity or something, that it's true that the feelings that people have about Christianity and what it stands for, there's a wide spectrum now. And in naming what we're doing here, something Christianity, does that have different connotations? And for some people, they're going to be good. Some people are going to be negative. Harlan says, what is the purpose of the new church? The new church, so the confusion, I believe, is that there's the new church that Swedenborg is describing, which I don't know fully if it's going to be, if that's inspired. He's describing it as a future state of the human race. We don't know if that's going to come out of Swedenborg stuff or it's coming together from other things. The new church that he describes is essentially the best connection that heaven and earth have had for thousands of years. And the purpose is to bring divine order into everything and have people, that things like this connection with the afterlife and making it so that there's not the pain that a lot of us go through. Those kind of things could be achieved if we get back into divine order. So all of that said, very fun meeting all of you. And we actually have another guest that's willing to call in right now and share a little more story. So I want to welcome Paul. Paul, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
I hear you very well, Paul. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
So, Paul, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear just a little bit about your journey and how did you find Swedenborg's material and what's it doing for you?
Well, early on in college, I studied William Blake, and William Blake was an artist who was very much inspired by Swedenborg.
Yes.
In fact, his most well-known work, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, is that the title itself is a combination of, conjugal love and, heavenly marriage and
That's right.
Heaven and hell.
Yes.
And he was known to attend the New Church in London, and although I don't think like an official Swedenborgian artist or anything, you can see a lot of his influence. I didn't see that influence until I made the effort to go to the library and look up Swedenborg, and I read Emerson's essay on him. And what was at first just this obscure name, I realized was a major figure around that time, and his ideas were very much in the air. And I became very curious about this because he's, conspicuously absent from, secular education.
Yes,
even though he was. Nobody knows. He was such a major figure.
Yeah, saying starting to talk about spirits will do that to you. People kind of forget you existed. Hey, Daryl and Marilyn say hey to you, Paul.
Hello.
All right, sorry, I interrupted. So continue.
Oh yeah. I began to look into his influence on art, and I found that the French symbolists were very into him, and I first approached him from a kind of scholarly, artistic perspective.
Yeah.
But then at that time I was also dealing with some problems like depression and social anxiety. And I was finding in Swedenborg, especially in his correspondences, a way to bring meaning into a world that didn't seem very meaningful. Swedenborg encourages us to look to everyday life for divine meaning, like very small gestures, little things, objects in our life. And this, you also see this in Blake, who is always encouraging people to turn to the senses, just sight and hearing, to take in spiritual meanings. You don't need to have a overwhelming sort of near-death experience to experience the divine. You can experience it just through your senses. And I think this helped me sort of reconnect with my body because I was feeling very depersonalized. So that's how I came across Swedenborg. Yeah,
it's awesome, and so it seems like it was initially like an intellectual curiosity. It was fascinating, but then became something that was really, really reaching you at a time when you needed something.
That's right. It was a very happy coincidence.
Yeah. Okay, and I love that idea of that through having the right sort of knowledge filter, suddenly things that seemed mundane and inconsequential can actually be a connection to something deeper. And I love trying to do that. I'll look at a tree and think about, okay, what did Swedenborg say? Like load a few correspondences in my head and then just see what else comes. I remember once, now I see that when you're below a tree, the leaves above look like they can be between you and the sun. So are there certain things that kind of block you off from the deeper truth, or that you think do you have any examples of something that struck you as an object you looked at that sort of seemed like, oh, that's a correspondence, or anything specific like that?
Well, you brought up the tree. The tree is very interesting because Blake also talks about an ignorant person seeing a tree as just a green thing standing in the way. Whereas if you see the heavenly meaning, it's this beautiful divine creature in front of you. And I think I was very much a person who just saw trees as green things standing in the way. In school, I was also studying art and trying to tune into finer details. And I began to see that things have a complexity that I wasn't seeing, and the inability to see that complexity can, I think, contribute to your to something like depression. It's very important to see beauty in the world, and I think Swedenborg helps us see that.
Yeah. So and I love that you're using the concepts to help in depression. I had a big long spell of it myself, so I was just wondering, do you have any other insight for anybody who might be going through it? Useful things like this is how I used some of the concepts to help me to cope.
Yes. What I've noticed is that, and I've learned this from I think watching your videos, Swedenborg, to track what's going through my head throughout the day. When I'm looking at an object, when I'm reading something, when I'm on YouTube, the things that are going through my head, just track that, and also be aware of when you're not tracking it. And this is, trying to tune into, the heavenly influx or the hellish assault. And you can write this stuff down. I write it down. I've been keeping, a journal, and I like to compare that to Swedenborg's experiences. I don't consider them mystical experiences. It's just the chatter that goes through my head, and I can begin to, see what's helping me and what kinds of thoughts lead to very negative states.
Yeah, so you'll like sort of catalog, I was thinking this about this, and then sort of map some consequences of that?
That's right.
It's amazing. Yeah, that's awesome. And go ahead.
Oh, yeah. One more thing would be I have found a lot of meaning looking at art from a spiritual perspective, which, in a secular environment isn't totally popular, but I think it is a way of actually invigorating the art world and things like that. I think that, art can't be reduced to its just objective qualities. I think that it's connected to what Swedenborg is describing as the spirit realm. And this is something that we can tune into. And I've found a lot of meaning in that.
Yeah. And so I guess my final question I want to ask is, are you making art, and do you feel like it's Swedenborg influenced in any way?
Yes, I am definitely trying to make art. I'm writing poetry, and I'm writing songs, and I take inspiration from Swedenborg and the Swedenborg and the artists who were influenced by Swedenborg. And many of the artists don't overtly talk about Swedenborg in their works, but you can see it there, like in Baudelaire's correspondences. I would hope that the Swedenborg influence would be in the background there. And I definitely hope to be a sort of Swedenborgian artist.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And I know that with art, you can't force it too much. Like, hey, everyone, I'm going to teach you about Swedenborg through this art, because then you start to lose some of this organic feel of it. So I like the direction you're going. Do you have it out? Is it on the web somewhere?
Not yet.
Okay, well, when you get it up there, let us know. I'd love to be able to see and hear.
I will for sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh,
I love this show.
Well, I love having you watching. I really appreciate your story and that you're taking this and you're making it into tools and making life better. And thanks for being willing to share it with us today.
You're welcome.
All right. Nice to meet you, Paul. Everybody, it's great to get to connect both through the camera and through the chat. Really appreciate all of you coming out and talking. I think that to have found Swedenborgian community, whatever we're going to call it, to have found like a group of people who can call in and write in and say, we like this stuff is helping, that's more than I could have dreamed I would ever get to find out in the world. So thank you everyone so much. And we're going to be releasing a regular old episode this coming Monday. So we'll be back to we got something on the internal sense of the first commandment. So that's going to be fun. I am headed off to this conference in London. So we won't have a community chat next Friday because we won't have the equipment ready to go, but we'll be back after that. So everybody, thank you so much. Great seeing you today, and hope you have a great week. Bye.